The crack of ice beneath her feet sounded like a gunshot in the frozen silence, and Eliza Laurent watched in horror as the world tilted sideways before the black water swallowed her whole. The January morning had started like any other in Fateful, Colorado, with frost thick on the windows and breath turning to fog in the bitter air. Eliza had left her father's ranch before dawn, determined to reach the mercantile before the storm clouds gathering on the horizon unleashed their fury. The shortcut across Boulder Creek had seemed sensible enough. She had crossed it dozens of times before, and the ice looked solid, white and thick under the pale winter sun. But she had miscalculated. The unseasonably warm afternoon 2 days prior had weakened the surface more than she realized, and now she was plunging into water so cold it felt like knives stabbing every inch of her skin. Owen Reeves had been tracking an injured calf along the creek bank when he heard the sound. His head snapped up, and his brown eyes went wide as he saw the young woman disappear beneath the surface, her dark blue cloak spreading around her like spilled ink before it too vanished into the black water. He did not think. There was no time for thinking. Owen threw himself from his horse and ran toward the creek, his boots pounding against the frozen ground. He could see her hands breaking the surface, pale fingers grasping at nothing. The current beneath the ice was stronger than it looked, already pulling her downstream, away from the hole she had fallen through. He hit the water at a dead run, and the shock of cold nearly stopped his heart. His lungs seized, his muscles went rigid, but he kicked hard, forcing his body to move. His fingers found fabric, then an arm, and he hauled Eliza upward with every ounce of strength he possessed. Her face broke the surface, lips already blue, eyes wide with terror and confusion. She was trying to speak, but only gasps came out, her teeth chattering so hard he could hear them clicking together. "I have got you," Owen said, though his own voice was shaking. "I have got you, just hold on to me." The bank seemed impossibly far away. His clothes were soaked through, heavy as lead, and the cold was sapping his strength with every passing second. But Owen had been breaking horses and hauling fence posts since he was 12 years old, and his arms were strong. He kicked toward the shore, one arm wrapped around Eliza's chest, keeping her head above water. His boots finally found purchase on the muddy bottom, and he staggered forward, half carrying, half dragging her onto solid ground. They collapsed together in the dead grass, both of them shaking violently. "Can you hear me?" Owen demanded, turning her onto her side as water streamed from her mouth. "Miss, can you hear me?" Eliza coughed, a deep, rattling sound that scared him more than anything else. Her eyes focused on his face and she nodded weakly. "We need to get warm," he said. "Right now. Can you stand?" She tried, but her legs buckled immediately. Owen caught her and simply lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, or perhaps the adrenaline flooding his system made her seem that way. His horse, a steady bay gelding named Rusty, had wandered closer, and Owen managed to get them both into the saddle, settling Eliza in front of him and wrapping his arms around her to keep her upright. "There is a line shack half a mile west," he said against her ear. "Hold on." The ride felt like it took hours, though it could not have been more than 10 minutes. Eliza was fading in and out of consciousness, her head lolling back against his shoulder. Owen kept talking to her, saying anything that came into his head, because he knew that if she slipped away completely, he might not be able to bring her back. "My name is Owen Reeves. I work the Double R Ranch about 3 miles south of town. My brother Jack runs it now since our father passed last spring. I was supposed to be checking the north pasture today, but that calf got loose and I followed it, and thank God I did, because otherwise I would not have been anywhere near the creek. You are going to be fine." I promise you are going to be fine. The lined shack appeared through the bare cottonwood trees, a small rough building that cowboys used during the spring and fall when they were working cattle far from the main ranch. Owen practically fell off his horse getting them to the door. He kicked it open and carried Eliza inside, laying her on the narrow bunk against the wall. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely work the buttons on her cloak, but he got it open and pulled it off, then her soaked dress. There was no time for modesty, no room for embarrassment. Hypothermia would kill them both if he did not act fast. He found wool blankets in the chest by the door and wrapped her in them, then stripped off his own soaking clothes and added more blankets around himself. The fireplace still had kindling and logs from the last time someone had stayed here. Owen's fingers were numb and clumsy, but he managed to get a fire started, blowing on the tiny flame until it caught and spread. Heat began to fill the small space, blessed and beautiful. He turned back to Eliza and pulled the bunk closer to the fire, then climbed under the blankets with her. She made a small sound of protest, but he wrapped his arms around her, sharing what little body heat he had left. "I know," he said quietly. "I know this is not proper, but we will die if we do not get warm. Just hold on a little longer." They lay there shaking together as the fire grew and the temperature in the shack slowly rose. Owen kept his eyes on her face, watching the color gradually return to her lips, listening to her breathing even out. His own shivers were subsiding, though every muscle in his body ached. After what felt like an eternity, Eliza's eyes opened fully. They were green, he noticed, a deep forest green that reminded him of pine trees in summer. She looked at him with confusion at first, then memory flooded back and her eyes went wide. "You jumped in after me," she whispered. "Yes, madam." "You could have died, so could you?" She was quiet for a long moment, still staring at him. "I do not even know you." "Owen Reeves," he said, "and you are Eliza Laurent. My father owns the ranch east of town near the old Spanish Trail. I know it. Good land." They fell silent again. The fire crackled and popped, and outside the wind was picking up, rattling the shutters. The storm Eliza had been trying to outrun was arriving. "We might be here a while," Owen said, glancing toward the window. "That looks like it is going to be a bad one." Eliza shifted slightly, becoming more aware of their situation. Her dress and his clothes were hanging near the fire, steam rising from the wet fabric. She was wrapped in blankets with a strange man, in a lined shack miles from anywhere, with a blizzard rolling in. "My father will be worried," she said. "There is nothing we can do about that until the storm passes and we are warm enough to ride. Trying to go out there now would be suicide." She knew he was right, but that did not make it easier. Eliza Laurent was a protective man, made more so since Eliza's mother had died 3 years ago. He would be out of his mind when his daughter did not come home. "Tell me about your ranch," Owen said, trying to distract them both from the awkwardness of the situation. "What do you raise?" "Cattle mostly, some horses. My father came out here in '58 right after the gold rush started bringing people through. He figured feeding the miners would be more reliable than mining for gold himself. Smart man. He is. Stubborn but smart." She paused. "What about you?" "You said your brother runs your place now. Jack is better at it than I ever was. He has a head for numbers and planning. I am better with my hands working with the animals. We make a good team. Are you close?" "Very. He is only 2 years older than me, and we grew up doing everything together. After our mother died when I was 8, it was just the 3 of us, my father, Jack, and me. We learned to rely on each other." Eliza found herself relaxing as he talked. His voice was deep and steady, with a warmth that seemed to spread through her along with the heat from the fire. There was something inherently trustworthy about Owen Reeves, something solid and dependable. "How old are you?" she asked. 24. You? 21. The storm outside intensified, wind howling around the shack and snow beginning to fall in thick sheets. Owen got up, keeping a blanket wrapped around himself, and added more wood to the fire. He checked their clothes, turning them to help them dry faster. "Another hour or so and these should be dry enough to wear," he said. "Then we can decide what to do." But the storm had other plans. As the afternoon wore on, it became clear they were not going anywhere. The wind was strong enough to knock a person off their feet, and the snow was falling so thick they could barely see 10 feet beyond the window. Owen found some supplies in the shack, a tin of coffee and some hardtack that was probably a year old but still edible. He boiled water in a battered pot and made them both coffee, strong and bitter but hot. They sat by the fire, wrapped in their blankets, sipping the coffee and listening to the storm rage. "I am sorry," Eliza said suddenly. Owen looked at her in surprise. "For what?" "For this. For falling through the ice and nearly getting us both killed. For you having to rescue me like some helpless damsel in a dime novel. You are not helpless. The ice broke. That could have happened to anyone. But it happened to me. And now we are stuck here and my father is probably organizing a search party and your brother is wondering where you are, and all of this is my fault." Owen set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. "Listen to me, Eliza Laurent. You did not ask for the ice to break. You did not ask for any of this. And I do not regret jumping in after you for 1 second. If I had to make that choice again right now, I would do the exact same thing. Do you understand?" His intensity surprised her, and she found herself nodding. There was something in his eyes, something fierce and protective that made her chest feel tight. "I would have done it for anyone," he continued, his voice softer now. "But I am especially glad it was you." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Eliza felt heat rising to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. They ate the hardtack in silence, washing it down with more coffee. As evening fell and the storm continued, it became clear they would be spending the night in the shack. Owen laid out all the blankets they had, creating a makeshift bed near the fire. "I will sleep on the floor," he said. "Do not be ridiculous. It is freezing and we only have so many blankets. We already shared them once to stay alive. We can do it again to stay warm." He hesitated and she could see the internal struggle on his face. He was trying to do the right thing, trying to be honorable. "Owen," she said gently, "I trust you. You saved my life. I am not afraid of you." So they lay down together again, this time with their clothes on, sharing the blankets and the warmth of the fire. Eliza found herself pressed against his side, his arm around her shoulders. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. "Tell me more about your family," she said into the darkness. "What was your father like?" Owen was quiet for a moment and she thought perhaps he had fallen asleep. But then he spoke, his voice soft with memory. "He was a good man. Tough because he had to be, but fair. He taught us everything about ranching, about treating the land and the animals with respect. He always said that we were just caretakers, that the land would be here long after we were gone, and we had a responsibility to leave it better than we found it. That is beautiful. He died of pneumonia last spring. It came on fast. One day he was fine, the next he was burning up with fever. We got the doctor out from town, but there was nothing he could do. Jack and I sat with him at the end. His last words were to tell us he was proud of us." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. "I am so sorry. Thank you. What about your mother? You said she passed 2-3 years ago. She was thrown from a horse, broke her neck. It was instant, the doctor said. She did not suffer. And it has just been you and your father since then." "Yes. I keep the house, do the cooking and the accounts. My father is lost without her still. Some days I catch him staring at her chair at the dinner table like he is expecting her to walk in any moment. Grief is a strange thing, Owen said. It does not follow any rules or timelines. Jack still sets 4 plates at the table sometimes, forgetting that father is gone. They lay in silence for a while, listening to the wind and the crackling fire. Despite the unusual circumstances, despite everything that had happened, Eliza felt safe. More than safe. She felt a connection to this man who had risked his life for her without hesitation, this stranger who was somehow not a stranger at all. "Owen," she whispered. "Yes, thank you, for jumping in, for saving me." His arm tightened around her. "You are welcome, Eliza." She fell asleep listening to his heartbeat, and for the first time in 3 years, she did not dream of her mother falling. Morning came with brilliant sunshine, the kind of crystalline clarity that only follows a major storm. The world outside was buried under 2 feet of fresh snow, pristine and white. Owen woke first and carefully extracted himself from Eliza's sleeping form. He built up the fire and looked out the window, assessing their situation. Rusty had taken shelter on the lee side of the shack and was still there, pawing at the snow to get at the dead grass beneath. That was good. They would be able to ride out. Eliza stirred and sat up, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked young in the morning light, vulnerable, and Owen felt something shift in his chest. "The storm passed," he said. She came to the window and looked out. "We should go. My father will be frantic." They saddled Rusty together and set out with Eliza once again seated in front of Owen. The ride back to town was slow going through the deep snow, but the sky was clear and the air was still. Everything looked different, covered in white, peaceful and quiet. As they approached Platteville, they could see people out in the streets, digging out from the storm. Several men were gathered in front of the sheriff's office, and Owen recognized Eliza's father among them. He was a tall man with iron-gray hair and a weathered face, gesturing emphatically as he spoke to Sheriff Morrison. "Papa," Eliza called out. Eliza Laurent spun around, his face going from worry to relief to something harder as he took in the sight of his daughter riding double with a strange man. He strode toward them, and Owen brought Rusty to a stop. "Eliza Marie Laurent, where the hell have you been?" Elijah demanded. "I have been out of my mind. We were about to form search parties." "Papa, I am sorry. I fell through the ice crossing Boulder Creek. Mr. Reeves pulled me out and got me to a lined shack before the storm hit. We were stuck there all night." Elijah's expression shifted as he processed this information. He looked at Owen properly for the first time, taking in his honest face and steady gaze. "You pulled her out," Elijah said. "Yes, sir. She would have drowned otherwise. And you spent the night in a lined shack, alone." "Papa, he saved my life," Eliza said firmly. "He could have died pulling me out of that water. Do not you dare stand there and imply anything improper happened. Mr. Reeves was a perfect gentleman." The crowd had gathered now, people whispering and staring. Owen helped Eliza down from the horse and stood beside her, facing her father. "Mr. Laurent," Owen said quietly, "I understand how this looks, but your daughter is telling the truth. I did what any man would have done, and I kept her alive through the storm. That is all." Elijah stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I owe you a debt, Mr. Reeves, a debt I can never repay. You brought my daughter back to me." He pulled Eliza into a fierce hug, and Owen saw tears in the older man's eyes. The crowd began to disperse, satisfied that the drama was over. Sheriff Morrison clapped Owen on the shoulder. "Good work, son. That creek has claimed more than one life over the years." "I am just glad I was there," Owen said. Elijah released Eliza and turned back to Owen. "Come to dinner tonight, both you and your brother. It is the least I can do." "That is not necessary, sir. I insist. 6 o'clock. Do not make me repeat myself." Owen found himself nodding, and then Elijah was leading Eliza away toward their wagon. She looked back over her shoulder at him, and their eyes met. Something passed between them, an understanding, a promise of something unspoken. Owen rode back to the Double R Ranch in a daze. He found Jack in the barn, mucking out stalls, and his brother looked up in relief when he walked in. "Thank God," Jack said. "I was worried when you did not come back before the storm. I figured you had holed up somewhere, but still." "I did, in the North Line shack." Owen began unsaddling Rusty, keeping his hands busy. "With a woman." Jack froze. "What?" Owen told him the whole story, from hearing the ice crack to spending the night in the shack, to being invited to dinner at the Laurent Ranch. Jack listened without interrupting, his blue eyes growing wider with each detail. "So you saved Eliza Laurent's daughter," Jack said when Owen finished. "And now we are having dinner with him, apparently. Owen, do you know who Eliza Laurent is? He is one of the most successful ranchers in the county. He has connections all the way to Denver. This could be huge for us." "I did not do it for business connections," Owen said sharply. "I know you did not, but still." Jack paused. "What is she like, the daughter?" Owen was quiet for a moment, remembering green eyes and dark hair, the weight of her in his arms, the sound of her voice in the darkness. "She is brave," he said finally, "and smart." She did not panic, not even when she was half frozen. She just kept going. Jack grinned. "You like her? I just met her. You spent the night wrapped in blankets with her. You must have talked about something." "We did, about our families, about the ranches." Owen hung up the saddle and turned to face his brother. "Jack, there was this moment when we were lying there and she told me she trusted me, and I realized I would do anything to keep being worthy of that trust. Is that crazy? I have known her less than a day." "Maybe," Jack said. "Or maybe when you save someone's life, it creates a bond. Either way, we are going to dinner tonight and you are going to see her again. So we had better clean up and look presentable." They spent the afternoon finishing chores and making themselves decent. Owen shaved carefully and put on his best shirt, the dark blue one without any patches or stains. Jack teased him mercilessly, but Owen barely heard it. His mind was already at the Laurent Ranch, wondering what Eliza was doing, whether she was thinking about him the way he was thinking about her. The Laurent Ranch was impressive, a sprawling operation with a large main house, multiple barns, and corrals stretching as far as the eye could see. A Mexican man met them at the door and showed them into a parlor where Elijah was waiting. "Mr. Reeves, welcome," Elijah said, shaking Owen's hand firmly. "And you must be the brother." "Jack Reeves, sir. Pleased to meet you." "Likewise. Eliza is helping Maria finish up dinner. She will be out shortly. Please sit down. Can I offer you some whiskey?" They made small talk for a few minutes, discussing the storm and the damage it had caused around the county. Then Eliza appeared in the doorway, and Owen felt his breath catch. She was wearing a deep green dress that matched her eyes, and her hair was pinned up with a few dark curls framing her face. She looked nothing like the half-drowned woman he had pulled from the creek, and yet he would have known her anywhere. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her eyes finding his immediately. "I am so glad you came, Miss Laurent. You are looking well. Much better than yesterday, thanks to you. Dinner was a lively affair." Maria, the housekeeper who had worked for the Laurents since they arrived in Colorado, had outdone herself with roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and an apple pie that made Owen want to weep. The conversation flowed easily, with Elijah asking about the Double R Ranch and Jack asking about the Laurent operation. But beneath it all, Owen was aware of Eliza's presence across the table from him. Every time their eyes met, he felt that same jolt of connection. She smiled at something Jack said, and Owen memorized the way her whole face lit up. She reached for the salt at the same moment he did, and their fingers brushed, sending electricity up his arm. After dinner, Elijah suggested the men have cigars and brandy in his study, but Eliza interrupted. "Papa, I was hoping Mr. Reeves might take a walk with me. I wanted to show him the new foals in the east barn." Elijah raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Do not be long. It is cold out." They bundled up in coats and walked out into the clear night. The stars were brilliant overhead and their breath fogged in the frigid air. They walked in silence for a few moments, their boots crunching on the snow. "I wanted to thank you again," Eliza said. "Properly, without my father hovering. You do not need to keep thanking me. I do, though." "Owen, you did not hesitate, not for a second. You just jumped in." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "I could not have lived with myself if I had not. If I had stood there and watched you drown, it would have haunted me for the rest of my life. But you did not know me. I was just a stranger. That did not matter, and besides," he added softly, "you are not a stranger anymore." Eliza moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. "No," she agreed, "I am not." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Owen wanted to kiss her so badly it hurt, but he held back. It was too soon, too fast, no matter what his heart was telling him. "We should go back," he said reluctantly, "before your father comes looking for us." They walked back to the house slowly, neither of them wanting the evening to end. At the door, Eliza caught his hand. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "I would like that, very much. Come to church on Sunday, we can sit together." Owen agreed, though he had not been to church regularly since his father died. But he would have agreed to just about anything if it meant seeing Eliza again. The ride back to the Double R was quiet, with Jack mercifully not teasing him. As they put the horses away, Jack finally spoke. "She is special, that one." "Yes," Owen said simply. "She is." Sunday came slowly, each day seeming to drag. Owen found himself distracted, missing things Jack said to him, staring off into space while he was supposed to be working. He had never felt this way before, this constant awareness of another person, this need to be near someone. When Sunday finally arrived, he dressed carefully and rode into town early. The small white church was already filling up with families when he arrived, and he spotted Eliza and her father near the front. She turned as if sensing his presence, and her face broke into a smile that made his heart skip. He slid into the pew beside her, and she moved slightly so their shoulders were touching. The service passed in a blur. Owen barely heard the sermon, too aware of Eliza's presence, of the way her hand rested on the pew between them, close enough to touch. After the service, people lingered outside the church, gossiping and catching up. Several women approached Eliza to ask about her ordeal, and Owen found himself the subject of admiring glances and whispered comments. He shifted uncomfortably, not used to the attention. "Walk me home," Eliza asked, appearing at his elbow. "I thought you came with your father." "He can drive the wagon back alone. I would rather walk with you." They set off through town, taking the long way to avoid the main street and its curious onlookers. Eliza took his arm naturally, and Owen felt ridiculously pleased by the simple gesture. "People are talking," she said. "About us. About the night in the line shack. Does that bother you? No, let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. That is all that matters." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following the road out of town toward the Laurent ranch. The day was cold but clear, with weak winter sunshine filtering through the bare branches of the cottonwood trees. "Tell me about your dreams," Eliza said suddenly. "What do you want from life?" The question caught Owen off guard. "I have never really thought about it." I suppose I always figured I would keep working the ranch with Jack, maybe start my own family someday. That is all. What else is there? I do not know. Adventure, travel, something beyond just working the same land day after day. Owen considered this. I think there is adventure enough in making a life, in building something that lasts. My father always said that putting down roots was the bravest thing a person could do, because it meant committing to a place and a future even though there are no guarantees. Eliza nodded slowly. I like that. I suppose I have always felt the same way, though I never put it into words like that. I love this land. I love watching the seasons change, seeing the cattle grow fat in summer and knowing we helped make that happen. It feels important somehow, even though it is just a small ranch in Colorado. It is not just anything, Owen said firmly. It is your life, your work, that matters. They reached a small grove of trees near the turnoff to the Laurent property and stopped, neither of them quite ready for the walk to end. Owen, Eliza said, turning to face him. I need to tell you something. I cannot stop thinking about you. Ever since that day at the creek, you have been in my mind constantly. I know we barely know each other, and I know this is probably too fast, but I have to be honest. I feel something when I am with you. Something I have never felt before. Owen's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. I feel it too, he said. I thought maybe I was imagining it, or that it was just the intensity of what happened making me feel this way, but it is more than that. Eliza, I have not been able to think about anything but you for a week. She stepped closer, and this time he did not hold back. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. Her arms went around his neck, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to just the two of them, to the warmth of her lips and the softness of her hair under his fingers. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Eliza laughed, a soft, breathless sound. I have wanted you to do that since dinner last week, she admitted. I have wanted to do it since I first saw you in the firelight in the line shack. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. When they finally pulled apart, the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. I should get you home, Owen said reluctantly, before your father sends out a search party again. They walked the rest of the way hand in hand, and at the gate to the Laurent property, Owen kissed her one more time before letting her go. The winter weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful courtship. Owen found excuses to come to town, to stop by the Laurent ranch on his way to somewhere else. Eliza did the same, riding out to meet him under the pretense of checking on cattle or running errands. They talked for hours, learning everything about each other, building a foundation that felt solid and real despite the short time they had known each other. Elijah watched with a careful eye but said nothing. He saw how his daughter smiled now, how she hummed while she worked, how she looked toward the door every time she heard hoofbeats. He remembered feeling that way about his own wife, and though it pained him to think of Eliza leaving, he could not deny that Owen Reeves seemed like a good man. In late February, Owen asked Jack to ride out with him to check the north pasture, but when they got there, he veered off toward the creek instead. "What are we doing here?" Jack asked. Owen dismounted and walked to the spot where Eliza had fallen through the ice. The creek was still frozen, but spring was coming and the ice was starting to break up along the edges. "I need to talk to you about something," Owen said. "I want to marry her, Jack. I want to marry Eliza." Jack grinned. "Took you long enough to say it out loud. Anyone with eyes can see you are crazy about her. I know it is fast. I know people will say we are rushing. But Jack, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. She is the one. I knew it that first night in the line shack, and every day since has just confirmed it." "So what are you going to do?" "I am going to ask her father for permission, and then I am going to ask her." "When?" Today, now, if I wait any longer I am going to lose my nerve." They rode straight to the Laurent ranch. Elijah was in his study going over accounts when Owen knocked on the door. The older man looked up, saw Owen's face, and seemed to understand immediately. "Come in, Mr. Reeves. Shut the door behind you." Owen did, his heart hammering in his chest. He had faced down charging bulls and broken wild horses, but nothing had ever made him as nervous as this moment. "Sir," he began, "I know I have not known your daughter very long, but in the time I have known her, she has become the most important person in my world. She is smart and brave and beautiful, and I love her more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I am asking for your permission to marry her." Elijah leaned back in his chair, studying Owen with sharp eyes. "What can you offer her? What kind of life would she have with you?" "An honest one, sir. I cannot promise her riches or an easy life. Ranching is hard work, and there will be lean times as well as good ones. But I can promise that I will work every day to make her happy, to give her a home and a family and a partnership built on respect and love. I will never raise my hand to her, I will never betray her trust, and I will love her until my last breath." The silence stretched out, and Owen held his ground, meeting Elijah's gaze steadily. Finally, Elijah nodded. "You have my permission, Mr. Reeves. But you had better treat her right, because if you do not, you will answer to me. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir. Thank you. She is in the east barn, checking on a mare that is about to foal." Owen practically ran to the barn. He found Eliza in a stall, stroking the nose of a chestnut mare. She looked up when she heard him, and her face lit up. "Owen, I was not expecting you today." He climbed over the stall door and took her hands in his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. "Eliza Laurent," he said, "I love you. I have loved you since the moment I pulled you out of that creek, and I will love you until the day I die. Will you marry me?" Her eyes went wide, filling with tears. "Owen, yes. Yes, of course I will marry you." He kissed her then, right there in the barn with the mare watching curiously. When they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Owen said. "I wanted to ask your father first, and then I was going to go to the jeweler in town, but I could not wait. I had to ask you right now." "I do not need a ring," Eliza said, cupping his face in her hands. "I just need you." They told Elijah together, and the older man embraced them both, his eyes suspiciously bright. Jack arrived and heard the news and insisted they all toast with the good whiskey Elijah kept for special occasions. The wedding was planned for early April, before the busy season of spring roundup began. It would be a simple affair at the church in Platteville, with a reception at the Laurent ranch afterward. Eliza threw herself into preparations, sewing her own dress with help from Maria and the other ranch women, planning the food and flowers and every small detail. Owen felt like he was walking on air. Every morning he woke up thinking about Eliza, and every night he fell asleep with her name on his lips. He worked harder than ever on the ranch, wanting to prove to Jack and to himself that he could be a good husband, that he could provide for a family. In March, he took a break from work to go to the jeweler in Denver, making the trip with Jack. He chose a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy but honest and true, like their relationship. On the ride back, Jack was unusually quiet. "What is on your mind?" Owen asked. "I am happy for you," Jack said. "I truly am, but I am going to miss having you around all the time. Once you are married, things will change." "Not that much. Eliza and I talked about it. We are going to build a house on the east section of the Double R near the creek. We will still work together every day." "Near the creek, where she fell through the ice." "Yes, I know it sounds strange, but that is where our story started. It feels right to build our life there." Jack considered this and finally nodded. I suppose it does. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Promise me you will build a good solid bridge across that creek. No more walking on ice. Owen laughed. Deal. The weeks before the wedding flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Owen and Jack, with help from some of the ranch hands, began construction on the new house. It would be small at first, just 3 rooms, but they could add on as their family grew. Eliza rode out every few days to check on the progress, offering suggestions and bringing food for the workers. One evening, as the sun was setting and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Owen and Eliza stood together looking at the house. The frame was up and the walls were starting to take shape. It is perfect, Eliza said, leaning against his shoulder. I can already see us here. I can see our children playing in the yard, and you coming home from the range at sunset and growing old together in this place. I see it too, Owen said. Every detail. I have been dreaming about it since the day you said yes. She turned to him, her green eyes serious. Owen, are you scared at all? About getting married, about all the responsibility? He thought about it honestly before answering. A little, he admitted. Marriage is a big step, but I am more scared of not taking it, of losing you, than I am of taking it. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Because I feel the same way. The night before the wedding, Elijah insisted on a private dinner with just him and Eliza. They sat in the dining room where she had eaten with her mother for so many years, and Elijah was quiet for a long time, just looking at his daughter. You look so much like her, he said finally. Your mother, she would be so proud of the woman you have become. I wish she was here, Eliza said, her voice thick with emotion. So do I. But I think she would have loved Owen. He is a good man, Eliza. He will take care of you. I know he will. But Papa, I need you to know something. Just because I am getting married does not mean I am abandoning you. You are still my father and I will still be here. The double R is only a few miles away. I know, but it will not be the same. This house will feel empty without you in it. He paused, clearing his throat. I have something for you. It was your mother's. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a delicate gold locket. Inside were tiny portraits, one of Elijah and one of her mother on their wedding day. I want you to wear this tomorrow, he said. So she can be there with you, in a way. Eliza took the locket with trembling hands and fastened it around her neck. Thank you, Papa. I will treasure it always. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect April mornings when spring feels full of promise. Eliza dressed carefully in her white gown, simple but elegant, with lace at the collar and sleeves that Maria had painstakingly sewn. She wore her mother's locket and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Owen had picked for her the day before. The church was packed with people from all over the county. Cowboys and ranchers, shopkeepers and farmers, all come to see Eliza Laurent's daughter marry the man who had saved her life. Owen stood at the altar in his best suit, his brother beside him, and when Eliza appeared in the doorway on her father's arm, he felt tears spring to his eyes. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The ceremony was brief, the preacher speaking about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. Owen barely heard the words. He was too focused on Eliza, on the way her hand trembled slightly in his, on the tears shining in her eyes as they spoke their vows. I, Owen Nathaniel Reeves, take you, Eliza Marie Laurent, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part. I, Eliza Marie Laurent, take you, Owen Nathaniel Reeves, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Owen kissed Eliza with such tenderness that several women in the congregation openly wept. They walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, husband and wife. The reception at the Laurent ranch was a joyous affair. Maria and the other women had cooked for days, and there was enough food to feed an army. There was music and dancing, laughter and toasts. Jack gave a speech that was both heartfelt and embarrassing, talking about how Owen had been impossible to live with for the past 3 months, moping around like a lovesick calf. As the sun began to set, Owen and Eliza slipped away from the party. They rode together on Owen's horse out to their new house, which was finished just in time. Someone, probably Jack, had started a fire in the fireplace and left flowers on the table. "Welcome home, Mrs. Reeves," Owen said, lifting Eliza over the threshold. "Mrs. Reeves," she repeated, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that." They spent their wedding night in their new home, learning each other in the firelight, whispering promises and declarations of love. And when Owen woke in the early morning with Eliza curled against his side, her dark hair spread across the pillow, he sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever force had led him to that creek on that frozen January day. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, as all first years are. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, figured out how to share space and make decisions together. There were disagreements, of course. Eliza was stubborn and independent, used to running her father's household her own way, and Owen could be set in his ways, especially when it came to ranch work. But they always talked it through, always came back to the love that had brought them together in the first place. And slowly, the house began to feel like a true home. Eliza planted a garden and filled the rooms with curtains and quilts she made herself. Owen built furniture in the evenings, a rocking chair and a proper dining table, shelves for books and dishes. In late autumn, Eliza began to feel ill in the mornings. At first she thought it was something she ate, but when it persisted for over a week, Maria pulled her aside. "Child, when was your last monthly bleeding?" the older woman asked gently. Eliza thought about it and felt her eyes go wide. "Not since before the wedding." "Then I think you are with child." Eliza could barely breathe. A baby. She was going to have Owen's baby. The thought filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She waited until dinner that night to tell him. They were sitting at the table he had made, eating stew she had cooked, and everything felt so domestic and perfect that she could not hold the news in any longer. "Owen, I need to tell you something." He looked up from his plate, concern crossing his face at her serious tone. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, at least I do not think so." "Owen, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her, and she worried that he was not ready, that this was too much too fast. But then a grin spread across his face, wide and joyous, and he was on his feet, pulling her into his arms. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Eliza, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy. I am beyond happy. I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am everything all at once." He pulled back to look at her face, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "How are you feeling? Are you sick? Do you need anything?" "I am fine. A little queasy in the mornings, but Maria says that is normal." "I am going to take such good care of you," Owen promised. "Both of you." He was true to his word. As Eliza's belly grew through the winter and into the spring, Owen was attentive and devoted. He would not let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. He rubbed her feet when they swelled and held her hair back on the mornings when the sickness was particularly bad. He talked to her belly, telling their unborn child stories about the ranch and the family they would be part of. In early June, on a warm afternoon when the wildflowers were in full bloom, Eliza went into labor. Owen rode like the wind to get the midwife from town, and then he paced the floor of their bedroom while Maria and the midwife worked. The sounds of Eliza's pain tore at his heart, but when he tried to go to her, Maria shooed him away. "This is women's work. You stay out here and let us do our job." The labor lasted through the afternoon and into the evening. Owen wore a path in the floorboards with his pacing, Jack sitting with him and trying to distract him with talk of the ranch. But Owen could think of nothing but Eliza, of the woman he loved going through unimaginable pain to bring their child into the world. Finally, as the sun was setting, he heard it. A thin, warbling cry that grew stronger and more insistent. Owen was on his feet in an instant, and a moment later Maria opened the bedroom door, beaming. "You have a son," she said. "A strong, healthy boy, and your wife is doing well." Owen pushed past her into the room. Eliza was propped up against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, looking exhausted but radiant, and in her arms, wrapped in a blanket that Eliza had sewn herself, was a tiny red-faced baby. "Owen," Eliza said softly, "come meet your son." He crossed to the bed on shaking legs and sat carefully on the edge, staring down at the tiny person in his wife's arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and his eyes, when they opened briefly, were a murky blue that would probably change color in time. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "Do you want to hold him?" Owen nodded, not trusting his voice, and Eliza carefully transferred the baby into his arms. He was so light, so fragile, and Owen held him like he might break. The baby made a soft sound and turned his head toward Owen's chest, and something inside Owen's heart cracked wide open. "Hello, son," he said. "I am your father, and I promise I am going to do everything I can to be worthy of you." They named him Ethan Samuel Reeves, after Owen's father and Eliza's grandfather. Ethan was a good baby, sleeping well and eating heartily, growing stronger every day. Owen was besotted, spending every free moment with his son, teaching him about the ranch even though Ethan was far too young to understand. Elijah came to visit often, delighted to be a grandfather. He would sit for hours holding Ethan, telling him stories about his grandmother and the early days of the ranch. Jack was equally taken with his nephew, already making plans for all the things they would do together when Ethan was old enough. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with joy. Owen would come in from the range at sunset to find Eliza nursing Ethan in the rocking chair he had made, humming softly, and the sight never failed to make him pause in the doorway, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they had built. 2 years later, they had a daughter. They named her Rose Catherine, after Eliza's mother. She had Eliza's green eyes and Owen's stubborn streak, and from the moment she could walk, she was following her older brother around, determined to do everything he did. The years passed in the way years do when life is good, simultaneously slow and fast. Ethan grew into a strong, responsible boy who loved the ranch and the animals. Rose was wild and fearless, climbing trees and racing her horse like she had been born in the saddle. 2 more children followed, another boy named James and a daughter named Lily, and the house that had started as 3 small rooms grew to accommodate them all. Eliza and Owen grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They had their challenges, as all families do. There were droughts and hard winters, sick cattle and broken fences, arguments and tears and frustrations. But through it all, they had each other. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Eliza with a trip into Denver. They left the children with Jack and Elijah and took the train to the city, staying in a hotel and eating in restaurants and walking through the streets like a young courting couple. On their last night, as they walked along the lamplit streets, Owen pulled Eliza close. "You ever regret it?" he asked. Marrying me, I mean. Tying yourself to a simple cowboy instead of someone who could have given you more. Eliza stopped and turned to face him, her green eyes fierce. Owen Reeves, do not you dare. You have given me everything. A home, a family, a love that most people only dream about. I have never regretted marrying you for a single moment. Not one. Even when I am stubborn and difficult. Even then. Especially then, because those are the times when I remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your strength, your determination, your absolute refusal to give up on the things you care about. He kissed her there on the street, not caring who saw, and she kissed him back with all the passion of the young woman who had fallen through the ice all those years ago. They returned home to find the ranch running smoothly under Jack's supervision, and the children having had a wonderful time being spoiled by their grandfather and uncle. That summer, they decided to build on again, adding more rooms as the children grew and needed more space. One evening, as they stood together watching the sunset from the porch of their expanded home, Owen's arm around Eliza's shoulders, she leaned her head against his chest. You remember the day we met? She asked. Every detail. The crack of the ice, the look on your face, the cold of the water. I remember being so scared. And then I remember your hand grabbing my arm, and suddenly I knew I was going to be all right. You saved me that day in more ways than one, Owen. You saved me too, he said quietly. I did not even know I needed saving until I pulled you out of that water and realized what my life had been missing. What was that? Purpose. Meaning. You, Eliza, you were what I needed, and I did not even know it. She turned in his arms and kissed him, soft and sweet. We saved each other then. Yes, he agreed. We did. The years continued to pass. Ethan grew into a fine young man who took naturally to ranching, eventually taking over much of the day-to-day work alongside his Uncle Jack. Rose surprised everyone by developing a talent for training horses, able to gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and skill. James became interested in the business side of things, learning to manage accounts and negotiate prices with buyers. And Lily, the youngest, inherited her mother's love of growing things, turning the garden into a productive operation that supplied vegetables for both the Reeves and Laurent ranches. Elijah passed peacefully in his sleep when Ethan was 18, and they buried him next to his beloved wife on a hill overlooking his ranch. Eliza grieved deeply, but took comfort in knowing that her father had lived to see his grandchildren grown, had died knowing that his daughter was happy and loved. Jack never married, claiming that someone had to be the fun uncle, but he was a fixture in all the children's lives, teaching them to ride and rope, and all the skills they would need to thrive in ranch life. As Owen and Eliza moved into their 50s and then their 60s, they began to slow down, letting the younger generation take over more of the work. But they were still active, still involved, still deeply in love. They would sit together on the porch in the evenings, watching their grandchildren play in the same yard where their own children had played, marveling at how quickly the years had passed. On a cool October evening, when the aspen trees were turning gold and the air smelled of wood smoke and coming winter, Owen and Eliza took a walk down to the creek. It was their tradition, something they did every year on the anniversary of the day they met. The creek was running clear and cold, and the cottonwood trees that lined its banks were nearly bare. They stood together on the bridge that Owen and Jack had built all those years ago, looking down at the water. 47 years, Eliza said softly. It has been 47 years since I fell through that ice. Best day of my life, Owen said. You almost died. But I did not, and I got to spend the rest of my life with you, worth it 1,000 times over. Eliza leaned against him and he wrapped his arms around her, just as he had done so many times before. The wind rustled through the bare branches, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. "I love you, Owen Reeves," Eliza said. "I have loved you since that first night in the line shack, and I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Eliza Reeves. Always have, always will." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and purple. Two people who had built a life together from a single moment of bravery and connection. The ranch stretched out around them, generations of work and love made visible in every fence post and barn, in the children and grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. And in that moment, standing on the bridge over the creek where their story began, Owen and Eliza were exactly where they were meant to be. Together, always together, from that frozen January day to this golden October evening and all the days in between. Their love story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was quieter than that, built on daily choices and small kindnesses, on showing up for each other day after day, year after year. It was a love story that started with a rescue and became so much more, a partnership and a friendship and a romance that lasted a lifetime. As they walked slowly back to the house, hand in hand, the lights from the windows glowed warm and welcoming. Inside, their family was gathering for dinner, 3 generations of Reeves coming together just as they did every week. There would be laughter and storytelling, teasing and love, the comfortable chaos of a family that knew it was blessed. Owen held the door open for Eliza, and she smiled up at him, that same smile that had captivated him all those years ago. He smiled back, and they went inside together, ready for whatever the future held, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Their story, which had begun with ice and cold water and desperate fear, had become something warm and lasting, a testament to the power of love and the strength of 2 people committed to building a life together. And as the door closed behind them and the sounds of family filled the air, it was clear that this was the happily ever after they had both been seeking from that very first moment when their eyes met in the line shack, and they recognized in each other something precious and irreplaceable: the end.